Today I'm going to tell you guys how my life changed. I was just 11 years old when it happened, and I was about to go into middle school. It was a normal summer day. It was June 11th, 2011, and I went to get my routine vaccinations for school. I was sitting in the doctor's office, waiting in the waiting room with my brother, and I remember how he was always very talkative when he was nervous, so he would not stop talking because he was having his shots too. A little bit after that, we got called back into the back room, and my brother went first. He had his shots and everything was fine. It was my turn to go, and my doctor, before letting the nurse give me my shots, told my mom that he recommended a shot called the Gardasil shot to protect against HPV. And since cancer runs in my family, my mom figured it'd be a good idea. So I had my first 2 shots, the normal routine vaccinations in my right arm, and that was fine. Everything went as planned. And then the nurse put the other vaccine in my left arm, the Gardasil shot. As soon as the fluid in it started going into my body and she started injecting it, I started screaming because I was in a pain I never felt before. And I had never reacted from a shot medicine ever before in my life. So I was already scared from that. I didn't stop screaming until she took the shot out. And then I remember I was sitting on the tall bench in the doctor's office, and my mom was standing in between my legs, and she was asking me if I was okay, saying that I looked really pale and my lips were going blue. I remember all of a sudden a heat went over my body and I felt like I was burning up from the inside. All I could hear, all the noise from outside drowned out, and all I could hear was a high-pitched ringing tone in my ear. And I remember my mom trying to shake my face and asking me if I was okay. And I remember trying to answer her, and then everything went black. I woke up in what I thought was seconds, but turned out to be a matter of minutes. And I woke up to over 8 doctors and nurses holding me down, getting ready to put an oxygen mask on me. I remember looking over in the corner of the room with my mom and hugging my brother, sitting on one of the benches, crying like I had never seen before, and just a look of panic I had never seen on my mom's face before. She was always a very calm, collected person, and she never showed when she was scared, and that was the first time I'd ever seen my mom scared. I remember I wasn't allowed to leave for over an hour, and I had to lay down on the bench with my feet up on the wall. And the doctor had just explained to me how I had had a seizure and that I was going to be okay, but I had to wait and then I could go home. Finally, they let us leave. My doctor told us to get food, so I ate, and then I went home and I just slept for hours. The following weeks were the worst. I threw up straight for 2 weeks, and I could barely hold any food down. The months leading after that was when the stomach problems started, and I started getting migraines. I went to so many doctors, and I remember how excited I was before to start middle school. And then all this happened, and I went from being a healthy, normal kid to playing 5 sports, hanging out with her friends, family, to absolutely nothing, having to quit all sports. I went to multiple doctors, and they all had different reasons for what was wrong with me. They all had different diagnoses, and some of them were true, some of them I still have, most of them were not. None of them could give me a straight answer, and none of them would specifically out loud say it was as correlation to the shot. Meanwhile, I was completely fine before it happened. I remember that I started my first year in middle school and ended up having to drop out halfway through and do Florida virtual school. And I just remember at the time it was a lot easier for me to isolate myself and not tell a bunch of my friends who, while they were my friends, were still middle schoolers and wouldn't understand how one could just have a seizure and have a bunch of medical problems from one shot. It's kind of hard to explain to middle schoolers. But I just found it easier to isolate myself. So I did the online school. I was in and out of in class and online throughout middle school to my freshman year. I went to so many doctors that I didn't even know existed, who came up with diagnoses I didn't even know were real. And it wasn't until I was 13 in my freshman year that a doctor finally told me that I would have to wait to outgrow the shot, and it would take as long as the shot was in my body until it left my body. The part that they all paused to tell me and my family was that it was going to take about 5 to 10 years for that to happen. That was one of my hardest moments when I was 13, was to find out that I was not going to go back to somewhat my normal self for at least 5 to 10 years. That was a hard year for me, and I went through a little bit of like depression and stuff through that because it was just too much to grasp, and there was times where I felt so sick that I thought I was dying. And when I was 11, that's the scariest thing you can think of. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I reconnected with one of my old friends from preschool. She happened to be in my Spanish class, and I wasn't even supposed to be in this Spanish. This was my 4th year retaking Spanish 1. And she happened to sit right next to me, and we just became really close again. And it was because of her that I met so many of the people that I'm friends and best friends with today and close with. She's the one who actually helped me get out of that stage of thinking that there was like nothing that I could do to feel better, and that I didn't have to isolate myself, and that people could understand. And she helped me get back a social life, basically, and enjoy my life. And she introduced me to my best friends today, who are the closest to me right now. She taught me to embrace all my flaws, and that it's okay to be weird and maybe a little crazy. And she got me back to going to football games, to high school parties, to dances, everything. And she just really helped me get back to who I was. And I found that the biggest thing I took away from my friend and from this whole experience was that you can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control what you do about it and how you live your life after. And she helped me realize that. And I'm happy to say it's 8 years later, and I have barely any of the symptoms left. And I'm in college, my freshman year of college, in school, and I'm the happiest that I've been.
Please stop recording it.